Dick Trickle, who is having a cigarette. You know, he has a cigarette lighter in the car. He just reached for it.
Reminds us of the days of Davey Pearson. He used to do that all the time.
3, 2, 1.
What's up, everyone? Hope everybody out there had a great week. What about that intro right there? I mean, come on. This is actually the truth. I mean, take a look. David Pearson here. Look at that cigarette lighter right there in the dash. Oh, man. This is going to be a fun episode. It's going to be fun for me. Hopefully you enjoy it and have as much fun with it yourself. But if you're like me, you know that tobacco cannot be in sports anymore, especially in NASCAR. After so many years of Winston being a title sponsor, it's just not that way anymore. And so many things have changed. But if you're like me, you know kind of what went on with that, but you really don't know what went on as far as details. So I'm going to talk some about that here in just a little bit. But first off, I just want to start out with some of these old cars, because when I was putting together the episode for last week with retro commercials, seeing the old chewing tobacco cars out there and everything else just reminded me of these old, cool-ass paint schemes that I used to love so much. And maybe start thinking about this a little bit more. And I was like, I bet some other people remember these cars as much as I do and haven't seen them in a while, so I'm going to put them together. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a look at some of these old kick-ass tobacco-sponsored race cars. And again, we're going to talk about so many different aspects. But right now, let's take a look at some of these cars. And I'm going to start out with this one right here, because I think probably a lot of people would be a little bit surprised to realize this is Davey Allison. Davey Allison out there in his very first start at Talladega. I believe this was 1985. But he was out there in the Lancaster Premium Chewing Tobacco car. This is a Hoss Ellington car, obviously, with that cool number 1 logo there. But very interested to me to find out, just to think about the fact of Davey Allison starting out in a tobacco car. But if you're going to talk about tobacco with NASCAR especially, it's going to be the chewing tobacco. And when you think about that, there's a name that just always pops up there. Made it to the top of my thumbnail for last week, and that was Skull. I mean, Skull being a part of this for so many years. And the thing about this is most people think about Harry Gant out there, the number 33. I mean, this iconic car. They kind of went hand in hand throughout Harry's career. But this actually started out in 1981 with a different driver and a different number. And this was Stan Barrett in the number 22 car. An interesting thing with this is this was Mach 1 racing back then that was Hal Needham and Burt Reynolds. This was basically Hollywood getting in NASCAR. But Harry Gant getting in there halfway through that very first season and getting out there and showing. Let's just say Stan Barrett didn't have that impressive of a racing career. I can still remember going to the track and seeing him run. That's what's so wild about it. But Harry having a pretty successful career. And, man, not only in the Cup, I mean, look at these cars in the Busch Series. I love that. And yes, someone call it the Busch Series. I know people fuss over this, so if it's still the, if it's Xfinity Series or Busch Series. To me, it's the Busch Series. Call it what you want. I love the old Busch Series. So, Skull, it wasn't just Harry Gant. They were out there, Benny Parsons. I mean, take a look at this here. Wild stuff. Phil Parsons out there. They just covered the whole Parson family, getting them out there in them old Skull cars and racing them around and having fun with them. And Skull kept on. I mean, even after Harry Gant and everything else, Andy Petrie was out there and brought back the Skull paint schemes. And, man, wild rides, pretty rides. And especially you get over here, you get to these bronze-colored cars. And, Ken Schrader was behind the wheel of these through them days. But, man, just cool-looking cars. And also over there, in the old Busch Series, you got Jack Ingram out there, man. Love this ride right here. I actually got a really cool story that I'm going to share one day. It involves Kenny Wallace, but it's with these old retro paint schemes like this one, all the cars were these bronze colors. I got to meet Tom Perdome. Really cool story, and I'll share that one day. But, man, just some cool rides with these guys here. And you also, if you got to throw in with the chewing tobacco, there's another brand that's been out there for a long time, and that's Kodiak. And Kodiak obviously getting out there with Rusty Wallace back in the day, the old Pontiacs, up to the later model Pontiacs. And then they switched over to the one and only Ken Schrader. And, man, I love the Ken. He's still out there racing. It's just so wild to think back to these days and think he's still out there kicking ass in race car today with that 25 Kodiak car. A couple different versions. and like the white car the best. And then, they moved over to the 41 car. Ricky Craven was in there for a while. I believe Steve Grissom was in there for a while as well. And they tried that green paint scheme as well as like what the 25 car had. And then we can also take a look here at Stacy Compton's car over there with the 92 car. Pretty ugly in my opinion. Really didn't like that car too much, but still Kodiak out there doing his thing. And another brand that's been around for so long, Levi Garrett. And you think about Levi Garrett, you think about Jeffrey Bodine, obviously with the 5 car, but in fact it was a lot of years prior to that. Didn't start out as the pretty car there at the end, but still that 98 car out there with Johnny Rutherford. Cool colors. Moved over to the gold and white. Finally over to the yellow and white. Morgan Shepherd, I believe, was in this car for a while too. But then up there to Jeff Bodine in that Hendrick Motorsports car. And to this day, I think that's one of the prettiest cars that was ever on the racetrack in NASCAR. Through those days, just loved that ride. But you also, here's another car, another name, association with Skoal over there, Copenhagen. I mean, look at this, A.J. Foyt out there in his Copenhagen car. And, these rides are just so damn cool because sometimes they were all out there together like this, this ad. You wouldn't see that today at all. But then obviously, if you saw the last episode, you saw the Chattanooga Chew car. That's obviously the Pearson boys, David Pearson out there, Chattanooga Chew car, the number 16. Yeah, they had a 21. They were in the Busch Series and the Cup Series. Also his son Larry out there and doing the same thing with the Chattanooga Chew cars. So such storied history with these guys. And then, you move along. You got different rides that were out there. You had the Redman car out here with Greg Biffle. We had Ron Hornaday out there in the Longhorn car, Truck Series. You had Timberwolf out there with the 37 car. Kevin Grubb was in this. Different people that were in this. David Green, different guys got through this car throughout them years. But then when you get to the cigarette part, really, there were some things that happened there, but probably the most famous one is going to be this one right here with Jimmy Spencer, with the Winston car, and also with the Camel car out there, old Smoking Joe's racing. So, but it all came to an end, obviously. And this is what we're going to go into now, is what the hell really happened. So what did change? What happened? What made everything kind of change throughout the whole industry, not only in NASCAR, but also just in sports in general? Everything changed. We're going to take a look back to the beginning days of when, when cigarette ads and everything started into it to the end. But this is really crazy because back in the day, there was doctors actually that were kind of promoting smoking in TV ads and radio ads. They had cartoons and mascots and everything else and different things that were, it's not funny, but they were just doing whatever they needed to do to sell some product, I guess, basically. But then in 1964, the Surgeon General, he issued a report out there that said, this is not good for you. This is not this is not what you need to be doing. So that started changing some things. And then the FCC, they issued this thing called a fairness doctrine, which basically what it did was when they were running ads about smoking, they also ran anti-smoking ads along with them, sometimes side by side with them, just things to say, if you're going to say this is an attractive thing, we're going to say that it's not an attractive thing. So that's what happened there for a while. But then up in 1971, they put a ban on cigarettes. As far as television and radio, they put a ban on it and said, you're not going to be advertising this on here anymore. Chewing tobacco, though, was not part of that deal, just cigarettes. So obviously in 1971, chewing tobacco good, smoking cigarettes bad. But they were still able to advertise in magazines, everything else, and in sports. Let's just say NASCAR. So obviously we know the history of that. Winston coming in and being such a long time promoter of this sport. I'm gonna tell you a personal thing right here. Myself, when I was in school, I moved to North Carolina in 1981, and had been around. My dad worked for Charlotte Motor Speedway, so I was at the racetrack all the time. I remember the old Winston girls that used to walk around and give out sample packs of cigarettes. I think it was like 8 cigarettes in a pack or something like that. And in school, when I was in school, We took field trips to R.J. Reynolds to see how cigarettes were made, to see the whole process, everything that went on with this. It was pretty wild, actually, very interesting to see. Something the schools will be doing today, but I'm just going to say, I don't think too many people that I went to school with back then ended up being really avid smokers of the situation. So just wild how the times have changed. But this brings me up to 1998. And this was the Master Settlement Agreement. And this is when everything really started changing. And, you know, we had a period of time still where there were some things going on in NASCAR with chewing tobacco, things of that nature. And that pretty much all ended in 2010. I think the Longhorn car or truck for Ron Hornaday was one of the last ones out there on the racetrack. So it's just interesting to me that all this right here is so detrimental. But yet, food, cereals, sugar, everything else that's out here killing people probably just as fast, if not quicker, than tobacco, which I'm not saying either of them is good by any means. But it's just interesting that commercials for cereal with that has absolutely basically no nutritional value other than some vitamins they can try to put on the box to say that they're decent. But it's just interesting to me how all this changed, supposedly for the benefit of people's health, but yet they're still out there pushing every sugar-filled, heart attack breeding product without any discrepancies. So anyway, I'm going to shut the hell up and be done with this. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please don't go out and take up smoking just because I showed you some ads and stuff like that, because that wouldn't be good of you to do. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you're having a great week, and we'll see you at the checkered flag.